Hey, I'm Justin.
This is Chaz.
Join us as we look back together, but learn to stay present.
Come with us as we rise up with hope on the horizon.
This is the podcast of extraordinary millennial gentlemen.
I'm curious, Charlie, with bringing up something you said just a bit earlier, in line with those perspectives changing. So like kind of, going through what you went through and maybe your initial reaction to kind of help other people and proselytize almost like, those that lose other people. 'Cause I've had very similar feelings for very similar events. And but I'd like to get your take on just kind of from that initial response and those feelings and those desires to how that's changed over the years as your perspective has changed of you, as you have changed, as you've, developed many more of those relationships and let other people in, and they kind of wrote some of those, chapters in your life book kind of a thing. So how's that evolved, and are some of those feelings maybe still there? I know because you kind of just said, oh, that's a bunch of crap. It's not me anymore. Just curious.
Yeah. Well, I guess I can't fully sign away that it's not me anymore,
Sure.
But I'm evolving. I evolve, and sometimes I revert back to stuff, and I got to learn a lesson again.
Multiple times. Yep.
Right. I don't know, Chaz, you got me lost on that one.
Well, I'll give you some time here. So I'll dive in a little bit of my history here, because there's a lot going through my mind here. So some of the hardest ones, and pre-show I was kind of divulging a few things to Justin. I don't know if these numbers are right, and I'll tone them down a little bit here. But before I was probably 12, I had, I would say, slightly under 10 people pass in my existence. I remember going to that many funerals. A lot of those were great-grandparents, grandparents, and then I started getting into some friends at very young ages. And, I don't think I was old enough to remember and have it be part of my life and write some of those chapters. And I remember how I felt. Probably the most impactful was my grandpa at the time. And then later in life, I think the hardest time I had dealing with that was I was out of country working in China, and my uncle passes, he lived with us for a while. Me and him were really close. We went cycling all the time. He had, just this big part of my life. I looked up to him with his young kids as a father figure, not to me, but just to see that. Because he's one of the youngest uncles I had as well. And then I think it was like 4 or 5 months later, one of my best friends passes, who's a few years younger than me, and leaves a family of I think he had 4 kids and his wife. And to be so just removed from it, and to only hear the news through social media and be 14-hour time difference away from people, not able to call people. So I kind of struggled through that, but I had, back to some of those similar thoughts. I was like, man, I think it'd be great to start a nonprofit organization. And even if all we get is $1,000 in, the first year, every time we reach this number, we would give it to someone in that situation, where that may be a game changer for them early on, where it's like, hey, we just need to upgrade to the car, or we just need this taken care of right now, right? And those were my thoughts, and that's still on the back burner, and I still have it written down somewhere, and it's still like, man, if I could do that, that would be great. I just haven't been able to, or haven't, just life is different for me, even though I have those feelings and those desires too, because of those situations. And a lot of people are left without fathers, and there's this kind of void from that. Especially, I know yours is your mom, but I don't think those have really left me. But I also haven't had a chance to work through that, and just getting through that. I can't remember a book at the time that really helped me through that. So I think your perspective is great there. I'd have to, let you talk for a minute, and maybe I could even bring back up some, how did I actually process through that? Because good or bad, there's potentially some lessons learned there, but there's a lot there. There's, you feel feelings like you had no clue you could feel at the time, and if you've gone through it, what I'm saying. And if you haven't, there's not much to, I mean, you can imagine, but it's different. And I think it gets different based on who they are and the relationships like you're talking about earlier, and how strong those were, and how that shaped you.
Well, I guess one thought that comes to mind is to be offered like, hey, you should read this book. It might be good for you. Mm-hmm. I might have been in a bad place. Like I might not have seen that, but usually you don't offer something to somebody unless you think they need it. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
And so I have a really good friend that, I don't remember his exact words, but it was along the lines of like, you don't need to talk about it anymore. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't that he didn't want me to talk about it. It was just like, hi, my name's Charlie. My mom died. Mm. Like it was the first thing that would show up in any conversation,
Wow.
Yeah.
But for me, it was, I don't know, it was what was forefront in my life at that moment. Mm-hmm. I know that I was angry, and I think that's why this person gave me the book to read. They didn't tell me to get over it. They didn't tell me not to be angry. Mm-hmm. I think they just opened a door and was like, hey, take a look over there and see if that helps you. And I came to the conclusion, I think maybe that they wanted me to come to, but was like, oh gosh, life's not as hard as I thought it was. I look at other people. I work with this one lady who's an assistant to another arborist, and she looks very clean, kept, and put together. But as you get to talk to her in just the first few seconds, you know that she's lived a hard life. Mm-hmm. And
I think we lost your audio. Did we, Justin?
Yep.
Did you? Okay. We'll push the good old pause button.
I hear you.
Okay. Oh, you're back.
I'm back. Okay, where did I get lost?
She looks like she, in the first 3 seconds.
Yeah, lived a hard life.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you can see that she's lived a hard life, and I don't care to ask her about that because it's ultimately not what's important to me. I work with this person, so it's got to be professional.
Yeah.
And but I do want to get to know somebody, and so I ask about their life. Kind of the normal shooting the breeze stuff. Where are you from? Where'd you go to school? And then we talked about faith somehow. I usually end up bringing up faith at work somehow. It always sneaks into a conversation. It's a big part of my life. And she's like, well, I haven't really been going to church for a long time. And it's like, oh yeah, that's fine. Because ultimately to me, that's fine. If she doesn't want church, if she doesn't want faith, it's not my
her choices. Yeah.
But I am a faith person. And so if she did want to talk about it, or she did have questions, the door's open with me. Mm-hmm. And so it has come up several times. And one time she asked me, she knows that I'm LDS, and she's like, oh, I'm going to go to my boyfriend's church. And I think I'm going to love it, And so I encouraged her, like, yeah, go see what it's all about, For me, that's a stepping stone for her, right? If she she didn't have faith before, and now she's trying to increase her faith. I don't care where she's going, as long as she's trying to increase her faith. And if the conversation at that point changes to, I've gotten what I can get from this place, where else do I go? Oh, great. Well, try here. Or here's what I've done. Mm-hmm. And here's a book, here's something that I've done. I'm not going to tell you it's going to work for you, but I'm going to open the door, just like the person gave me something.
That's what I was going to say.
Perspective.
And I don't know, you didn't describe the person in great detail who opened that door for you, to use your phrase, but that's exactly what you're talking about, that you have absorbed that process and you're practicing that process. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's so hard to be that for me as a guy a lot of times, because I want to see a problem I want to analyze it because I'm very analytical and run these scenarios in my head. And then I want to say, this is the best solution, and then pretty quickly I want to just be like, here's what you need. Right. I see that with my daughters and they're like, and I'm like, whoa, that was not supposed to be the reaction and the response. Right. And I don't think it's because of a lack of empathy, but it's overthinking what the situation is. When someone is going through difficulty, grieving, needing to process on their own, I just need to help them process through encouragement and not say, here, you should be at this point. Here you go. Right. Here's water. Here's food, metaphorically speaking, that I know you need. It's like people aren't ready in those same ways at those same times. And my mind also, I'm reading a book right now, totally unrelated to what we're talking about, but talks about a tendency that historians have to just reduce history down to the farthest thing from the complexities of life, right? It's like this person, served in this war, therefore, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, that's not who they are. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, that's we're talking a lot about kind of not just identity and self-identity, but self-identity through crisis and through loss. I feel like those themes are kind of coming out to me, and people are far more complex. And I love what you're saying, Charlie, because you're not just, again, saying, hey, I know exactly what you're going through. Here you go, right? Here's your task, or here's all you need to do. But you're kind of like getting to know that person, talking to that person, letting them share what they're going to share. And they may be ready for companionship. They may be ready for just conversations. They may not be ready for what you see as solutions or your version of like, here's what you need to do to feel better.
Yeah. Even if that's what they need. But if you give it to them like that, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And it's not because we're geniuses. We walk around like problem fix, right? But
I'd be like, create a problem. Thinking the problem fixed. It's not.
Yeah.
Yep.
A common thread that I'm hearing from both of you is
you're both completely insane. Sorry.
Okay, so side note, and then I'll get back to what I was going to say.
Sorry.
No, I remember my sister telling me that I told her this once, and I'm sure I did, but I was kind of like, everybody has their own kind of crazy. You just got to figure out what kind of crazy you're willing to like be around and can handle, and you'll find those like that's your people. That's your circle of influencers on your life and you on them.
Hey, thanks for spending some time with us today. Hope you find hope and joy throughout this upcoming week. If you've liked this podcast, please hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and we'll see you next week.
I ate my grandma.